One of the few games I'm excited about this year is the new Assassin's Creed 3. Now, I'm always excited about the new Assassin's Creed games, so it's hard to gauge whether I'm more or less excited than in previous years. And I've been trying to absorb every scrap of info about the game, and I was incredibly shocked when I read an interview with lead designer Alex Hutchinson in Edge magazine. In the interview, he said, "A lot of games have been ruined by easy modes." He went on to try and justify this opinion, and the logic follows that by allowing players to turn on easy mode and play through with less of a challenge, they don't get the full experience and it ruins the game. Now, I want to come out and just say that this is BS, but it does have a small grain of truth, so let's start there. I have had discussions with gamers who play their single-player games on easier difficulties than they should, and then when you ask them what they thought of the game, they describe their experience as underwhelmed. It's underwhelming because you took out the challenge, thereby removing the tension from the situation. It's like getting on a kiddie roller coaster and then complaining that there wasn't enough thrills. If you want thrills, go get on the giant roller coaster that they shut down if it gets slightly windy or drizzles. These people are ruining the experience for themselves, but that's their own fault. Many Assassin's Creed fans, including myself, think the series has gotten pretty easy anyway, since I can carry around a dozen medicine packets, throw smoke bombs or other bombs, and then even call in my own assassins to do all the dirty work when I'm feeling lazy. If they added an easier difficulty, I would never ever use it. All they would have to do is add a few more health points though, and less competent gamers could share that happy feeling I get when I stab someone in the throat. They could even add a harder difficulty to my Assassin's Creed games, which I would use. Think about this. If they suddenly released a version of the first Assassin's Creed game with a hard mode, would you play it? Hell yeah, I would, because it doesn't take much for me to justify playing through the first Assassin's Creed game again. Part of the problem is that many core gamers are still kind of exclusionary toward our hobby. They don't want games dumbed down so they can appeal to a broader audience. They don't have to be though. That's why you choose your difficulty, and I could choose to play on hard. Hutchinson did bring up one excellent point on this topic. He mentioned that more hardcore players can replay the missions to complete alternate objectives like taking less damage or being timed or not being detected. This is an excellent idea, and it's what makes me keep playing my Assassin's Creed games. It's my hard mode, because it makes the game more challenging for me, and that's what I need. Yeah, I may not have died in combat since Assassin's Creed 2, but the game is still challenging. Grand Theft Auto: The Ballad of Gay Tony added a similar concept, and it changed the game for me. I've been playing GTA since the series started, and that added another more difficult aspect, thereby increasing the replayability. This is where achievements could help. We already kind of do it. We should have an achievement for each difficulty. Have achievements for completing all the missions to 100%, including optional objectives like Assassin's Creed and some Rockstar games do. Also, don't let those achievements be available on the easier difficulty. This allows less competent gamers to play and experience the game, but it gives gamers like me an extra challenge. If one of my friends wants to complain about how easy a game is, but only has the easy completion achievement or doesn't have 100% completion, I can call him out on it, and gamers already play games for achievements, so what's the harm? Another aspect of this is the idea that cutscenes, story, and advancing the plot are rewards for playing the game. But a cutscene is not a reward. Your story is not a reward. These elements have been linked to success for far too long without any real justification. Playing the game is the rewarding aspect of gaming. If I wanted cutscenes, I'd play Final Fantasy. If I wanted story, I'd read a book. A game is a mixture of those elements that work together, but you have to remember what gamers signed up for, and it wasn't a movie. Developers need to lose the idea that knowing the ending of their story is their way of congratulating us for being good at the game. I can feel a sense of accomplishment by watching the final sequence, but the sense of accomplishment doesn't come from seeing the cutscene. It comes from the satisfaction I get when I overcome a challenge, and by having an adjustable difficulty level, competent gamers still get to overcome that challenge, save the universe, and feel a sense of accomplishment. Then they can try the game on a harder difficulty. Now I know these are games we're talking about, and they should have a sense of challenge to them, But in real life, we change the rules of games all the time. We play touch football, we play t-ball, we play water balloon volleyball, and we hurl lawn darts in the air and almost kill ourselves. In video games, we have cheat codes and mods, and that's okay. I remember growing up and borrowing a Game Genie from someone to replay some of my old NES games, and I never felt guilty. Old NES games were much harder than games now, and the Game Genie allowed me to experiment with the game by having powerful weapons or extra lives, or even skipping ahead to relive that one epic boss fight. It made the game easier. I think many of the gamers who grew up with the NES remember that games were much harder because they were shorter and fairly linear, so making them harder made the experience last longer. Many of our harder games also had poor controls, which highlights the difference between a bad game in the 80s and today. Bad games were hard back then, now they're just boring. Games were also more difficult in the 80s and the early 90s because many console games were influenced by arcades. And many arcade games were arbitrarily difficult to incentivize players to spend more quarters. Okay, let's relate all this back to now. Games were harder when I was younger, and I think this led gaming culture to only be accessible for a few people, thereby making the hobby more exclusionary and less inclusive, which is a sentiment that still pervades the culture today. Now, by putting easy mode into your game, you have a larger group of consumers. You get me, and at the same time, you can appeal to my aunt, and the both of us can play Assassin's Creed. The only difference is how our achievement list looks at the end. I've been trying to imagine a game that could actually not have an easy mode, but every time I come up with one, I think about it for a few minutes and realize how it could be implemented. I spent most of today thinking about easy mode for From Dust, but then I remembered how in SimCity you could play without any disasters on, and I realized that even From Dust could do something similar like take out the tsunamis and floods, which wouldn't make all the levels easier, but it would still make the game easier. Hutchinson may think he's protecting and appeasing gamers like me by setting the difficulty bar high, but I'd rather see an adjustable bar that lets more people get their stab on. By setting the bar high, he's only limiting his consumers, and by making statements about how easy mode ruins games, he's only trying to keep less competent players from feeling welcome, and ensuring that our hobby stays exclusionary. And this exclusionary mindset that surrounds gaming culture, and specifically big AAA games, needed to end a long time ago. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed watching Assassin's Creed cinematic trailers for the past week. After careful consideration, I've come to the conclusion that the trailer for Assassin's Creed Revelations is my favorite, and I await your hate mail. I would be interested to know if anyone can think of a game that couldn't use a difficulty setting, so leave any ideas in the comments section and I'll put some thought into it. Be sure to check out thebestgamesiteever.com for more reviews, features, news, and commentary about gaming, and feel free to like us on Facebook because the internet is lonely and we have poor self-esteem.